Welcome to Le Podcast de Philippe. Today, we're going to dive into a story with some serious international implications.
Yeah, some big ones.
It all started with a recent executive action by President Trump aiming to honor American greatness.
Oh, yeah. Those are his words.
His words, not mine. And that action has led to Google making a pretty interesting change on Google Maps,
Interesting for sure.
renaming the Gulf of Mexico
Oh, wow.
the Gulf of America,
Really?
at least for users in the U.S.
Wow, that's wild.
It's a story that really makes us question the influence tech companies have in shaping how we see the world.
For sure.
And it also makes us think about the legal complexities surrounding a seemingly simple name change.
Yeah, very true.
Stick around as we unpack this whole situation, exploring the potential consequences, both symbolic and practical.
Definitely stick around.
Don't forget to subscribe to Le Podcast de Philippe on YouTube and like the video for more deep dives like this one.
So what's fascinating about this situation is how it highlights the role of executive actions in American politics. These actions are directives issued by the president, and while they carry a certain level of authority, they aren't the same as a law passed by Congress.
Right.
President Trump's executive action in this case seems to be driving Google's decision to rename the Gulf on their platform.
That's right. CNN reports that Google is updating the name based on what they call official government sources,
Interesting.
which includes the Geographic Names Information System.
Huh.
What struck me is that this change will only be visible to users within the U.S.
Oh, wow.
For everyone else around the world, Google Maps will still show both names.
It really makes you think about Google's global reach.
Yeah.
This isn't just some minor edit. They're essentially presenting two different realities depending on where you're accessing their maps.
Yeah, like two different worlds.
It raises questions about the potential for bias and how these decisions might impact people's understanding of geography and international relations.
And we've seen similar situations play out before. Back in 2015, President Obama used an executive action to rename Mount McKinley to Denali,
Oh, we're
restoring its traditional Alaskan name.
right.
However, President Trump later reversed that decision, opting to reinstate the name that honored former President McKinley.
Those instances show how much symbolic weight these names carry
Yeah, a lot of weight,
and how they can be caught in the crossfire of political agendas.
for sure.
It also reminds us that executive actions, while powerful, can be overturned.
Right.
So the question is, could a future president reverse this Gulf of Mexico renaming as well?
That's a great question, and it leads to another layer of this issue. The Gulf of Mexico isn't solely within U.S. waters. You have Mexico, Cuba, and other countries bordering it, each with their own territorial waters and exclusive economic zones.
Yeah, that's right. These zones give countries special rights to things like fishing and natural resources in the waters near their coasts. And while there's no legal document that grants ownership of the name Gulf of Mexico, it is the internationally accepted name,
Huh.
used by organizations like the International Hydrographic Organization and the United Nations.
So President Trump's executive action and Google's subsequent map change might carry weight within the U.S., but on an international level, it doesn't seem to hold much legal ground.
Exactly. And this raises some interesting questions about the potential for confusion, especially for international travelers.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine someone from, say, Europe using Google Maps to plan a trip to Mexico.
Okay.
They see Gulf of America on their map and then arrive expecting to find signage and information using that same name.
Right.
It could create a real disconnect.
It's almost like we're talking about two separate realities here, one presented within the U.S. and another recognized by the rest of the world.
That's a great point, and it really underscores the influence that a company like Google
It's a
has.
huge influence.
They're essentially shaping how people perceive the world, and even a seemingly small change like this can have ripple effects. On se questionne sur la légalité que Google pourrait avoir à renommer des zones géographiques.
And those ripple effects could extend beyond just confused tourists. Think about researchers, scientists, and academics who rely on standardized geographical names for their work.
Oh, totally.
A research paper using Google Maps data might misrepresent the Gulf's name, leading to inaccuracies and inconsistencies in the scientific community.
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of clear communication and globally recognized standards when it comes to geographical names.
Yeah.
These names are more than just labels on a map. They represent shared history, cultural understanding, and even political relationships between nations.
CNN also points out that one of President Trump's arguments for renaming the Gulf was to emphasize its contributions to the U.S. economy.
Right, big economic benefits.
It's true that the Gulf of Mexico plays a major role in industries like oil and gas shipping and tourism, But by framing it as the Gulf of America, is there an implicit claim of ownership or dominance over the region being made here?
That's a valid point, and it's worth considering how that framing might be perceived by other countries who share this crucial body of water. Mexico, for instance, has a significant stake in the Gulf both economically and environmentally. So while focusing on the economic benefits might resonate with a certain audience within the U.S., it could potentially strain relations with neighboring countries.
It's fascinating to consider how this seemingly simple name change opens up a discussion about so many interconnected issues, from international law and diplomacy to the role of technology and the power of narratives.
It really highlights how interconnected our world is,
Yeah, for sure.
and how actions taken in one part of the world can have unintended consequences elsewhere. It's a reminder that we can't view these events in isolation. We need to consider the broader context and the potential impact on various stakeholders, both within and beyond national borders.
It's a reminder that we need to be critical consumers of information, especially in a world where technology allows for the rapid dissemination of ideas and narratives, sometimes even conflicting ones.
Yeah.
And it's like we're constantly navigating a world full of all these shifting narratives, and we're just trying to figure out, what's actually going on.
And that brings us back to this whole idea of the Gulf of Mexico, or should I say the Gulf of America,
Right.
as it appears on some maps now.
Crazy.
It's a prime example of how a seemingly simple name change can just become like a flashpoint for these bigger conversations
For sure.
about power, and perception and just the global flow of information.
It makes you wonder, where do we go from here? What happens if other countries or organizations push back against this name change? Could it lead to like a more fractured understanding of geography, with different maps showing different realities depending on who's creating them?
Yeah, those are some great questions, and I think they point to a need for, greater dialogue and collaboration on a global scale.
Yeah.
We need to find ways to kind of reconcile these different perspectives
Right.
and ensure that our understanding of the world is grounded in accuracy and mutual respect.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the narratives that define our world. We
Mm.
can't just passively accept information as it's presented to us. We need to engage in critical thinking, question assumptions, and seek out diverse viewpoints.
Exactly. And we need to be mindful of the influence that technology companies have in shaping those narratives.
Right.
Platforms like Google Maps have become so integral to our lives
Oh, yeah, for sure.
that we often take them for granted, but it's important to remember that they are not neutral entities. They are businesses with their own interests and agendas.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this fascinating story,
Yeah.
what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
I think the main takeaway is to be aware. Be aware of the power of names and how they can be used to shape perceptions. Be aware of the influence that technology companies have in the information we consume. And be aware of the importance of critical thinking and engaging in thoughtful dialogue to navigate an increasingly complex world.
Well said. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Gulf of Mexico name change. Don't forget to subscribe to Le Podcast de Philippe on YouTube and like the video. Until next time, stay curious.